Hey class, welcome. Happy Friday, everyone. Welcome to the last day of week 4 here. Nice job so far with the notes. I've seen some good things here. All right, make sure that you guys are checking the homework for comments, okay? Because I've been making notes. If you guys are submitting the homework, I've been making notes on there, all right? So this is going to be kind of a review day. We're going to kind of review the two kind of skills that we've learned this week. So we got this kind of review notes here, and then I'll have a quizzes for you guys to take afterwards, okay? Before we start the notes, all right, I'm just going to remind you to look into Schoology, right, and have this factors chart document, all right? Since we're still dealing with factoring, we want to make sure that we have this factors chart document out, or hopefully you have it printed and have this in front of you while we're doing these problems, okay? So here we go. All right. So directions here says to solve each equations by using that zero product property, and we're going to circle our solutions. All right. Remember to write two equations by setting each product equal to 0, right? So the two things that multiply together, we're going to set equal to 0 and solve both equations. Okay. So it looks like we have x minus 5 times x plus 4 is equal to 0. All right, so it looks like these first two problems are already factored for us. So we're simply going to write out our two equations, and we're going to solve both of them. All right, so I'm going to say that x minus 5 equals 0. All right, we know that we have to add 5 to both sides, so we get x is equal to positive 5. And I'm going to circle my first solution. All right, then we're going to take our second product of x plus 4, set that equal to 0 as well. And then we're going to solve this equation, right, by subtracting 4 from both sides. And we're going to say x is equal to negative 4 and circle our solution. All right, so we're taking each product and set it equal to 0. All right, so here we go. Number 2, we have x plus 7 times 3x minus 2 is equal to 0. Okay, so again, we're going to take our first product here of x plus 7, and we're going to set that equal to 0. And we're going to subtract 7, and we get x is equal to negative 7. All right, then I'm going to take my second product of 3x minus 2, and I'm going to set that equal to 0. And I'm going to solve this equation, right? And we start by adding 2 to both sides, right? Remember, we always do inverse operations to solve. So then we get 3x is equal to 2. Then we divide by 3, right? And if our answers don't simplify or don't reduce as fractions, right, we're just going to leave them as a fraction of 2 over 3. Right? We do not want to write these as decimals, just leave it as a fraction. All right, so that's using that zero product property once my equations are already in factored form. All right, these next two examples, all right, we're going to have to do the factoring first and then doing the solving piece. All right, so the directions here, right, say to solve each polynomial equation by factoring and using that zero product property. Right, that's my apples and oranges, right? I said my apples equal to 0, and I said my oranges equal to 0. And then remember that when solving, the equation must be set equal to 0, all right? That just means our equations have to equal 0, all right? Sometimes they're not always equal to 0, and we have to make it equal 0, but the problems we're going to see today are all going to be already equal 0. All right, so it looks like for both of these examples here, we're going to be factoring using that GCF. All right, so we had to fill out these lines, right? So 6x squared means x and x. It means 1 times 6, and it means 2 times 3. And now for 18x, right, we have our x. It's 1 times 18, 2 times 9, and 3 times 6. Right, and once I listed all my factors, I'm going to find that greatest number and or variable in common, and I'm going to make that my GCF, and that's going to go out in front when I factor this problem out. Okay, so it looks like for my numbers, it looks like there's a 6 in common for both, and it looks like there is 1 x in common. All right, so that means my GCF is going to be 6x. All right, and remember when we factor this, right, we have to ask ourselves, how do we multiply? How do we get back to our original problem, right? So 6 x times what gives me 6x squared? Well, 6 times 1 is 6. Oh, not 6. 6 times 1 is 6. So let me go ahead and fix that. All right, so I'm going to put a 1 there. And then I have this extra x, so then my extra x needs to go down in there. All right, and since it's just 1x, right, I don't need this 1 anymore. I can just leave my x there. All right, and now we have to ask ourselves, how do we get back to 18x if I take out this 6x, right? So who is 6 partner, or 6 times what will give me back to 18? Well, that's 6 times 3. So I got to put my 3 back in here, and I used up this x, so it's just going to be 3, right? So I factored it. Now I'm still not done because now I need to solve this problem. All right, so now I'm going to set each of my products equal to 0 and solve, right? So I'm going to say 6x equals 0. And I'm going to solve this, right? Because this is my first product. So divide by 6, divide by 6, and we get x is equal to 0. So that is my first solution. I can also say that x plus 3 is equal to 0. To solve this one, I am going to subtract 3 first, and I get x is equal to negative 3. All right, so those are my two solutions. All right, number 20 is going to look very similar to that. Right, number 20, I have 4x squared plus 20x equals 0, and I'm going to factor that to solve my equation. Okay, so 4x squared means I have x and x. I have 1 times 4, and I have 2 times 2. And for 20x, I have my x. I have 1 times 20. I have 2 times 10, and I have 4 times 5. All right, now I'm ready to find my GCF, or my greatest common factor. And it looks like it's going to be a 4 in common. And it looks also like I have an x in common. So my GCF is going to be 4x. And now I'm ready to finish factoring this, right? So 4x times what gets me back to 4x squared? Well, 4 times 1 is 4. And I have this extra x. So I'm going to put that there. But again, since I have that 1x, right, I can just simply write this as just x. All right, now I have to ask myself, okay, 4x times what will give me back to my 20x? Well, 4 times 5 is my 20, right? I have my x, so I don't need it. There's no x that's going to go in here, right? And that makes sense because 4x times 5 is 20x. All right, so now that I factored it, now I'm ready to solve, or not ready to solve my equation, right, by setting each product equal to 0, okay? So you need to write 2 equations every time and solve both equations, right? 4x equals 0. To solve this, we divide by 4. So then here we get x is equal to 0. And now we have x plus 5 equals 0. That's going to be my second equation. And again, to solve this, I'm going to subtract 5 from both sides. And we get x is equal to negative 5. So those are my two solutions here. All right, we got a couple more. So now these next couple ones, right, these are those trinomial ones, all right? These are hopefully you guys are finding a little bit fun. I know I've always enjoyed factoring trinomials, right? And it looks like you guys are getting really good at these. So, all right, so for factoring trinomials to solve, right, it's find the 2 factors that multiply to 20, but that add to 12. Right, multiplies to my last term and adds to my middle. All right, so my factors of 20 are 1 times 20, 2 times 10, and 4 times 5. All right, so which one of those factors adds to 12? Well, that's going to be 2 and 10. All right, so that means my factored solution is going to be x plus 2 times x plus 10 equals 0. So now I'm ready to solve this. So now I can say that x plus 2 equals 0. And I'm going to subtract 2 to both sides. And I'm going to say that x is equal to negative 2. And now I do x plus 10 is equal to 0, right? Because I have to set each product equal to 0 and solve. So I subtract 10, I subtract 10, and we get x is equal to negative 10. And those are my two solutions. All right, so for number 6, it's x squared minus 4x minus 32. All right, so now I'm finding factors of negative 32 that add to a negative 4. All right, so what are my factors of 32? Well, it's 1 and 32. It's 2 and 16. And it's 4 and 8. All right, so those are my factors, but they need to multiply to a negative 32 and add to a negative 4, right? So for these two numbers to multiply to get a negative, that means one of these have to be negative, right? But if they're going to add to a negative, that means my bigger number is going to be my negative. All right, so now that I have that listed, right, I can see that this 4 and negative 8 is going to be the pair that's going to add up to my negative 4. So now I'm ready to factor this. So I can say that x plus 4 times x minus 8 is equal to 0. Okay, so the signs are really important with these problems. All right, so make sure you go slow, you take your time, and you use your calculator and reference these notes. All right, so now we can say that x plus 4 is equal to 0. Right, and to solve this, we subtract 4. We get x is equal to negative 4. This is for my one solution. And now I'm going to do the same thing with x minus 8 is equal to 0. I add 8. I add 8. And now I get x is equal to positive 8. So those are my two solutions here, right? X is negative 4 and x is positive 8. All right, we're almost through. All right, I know these are a little bit longer just because there's multiple steps involved. All right, so just hang in there. We're almost through. All right, so it's the last two, right? We got x squared plus 7x minus 44. All right, so we want to find factors of negative 44, right? Factors of my c that add to my b value, or 7, right? So factors of negative 44 that add to 7. Well, I don't know what my factors of 44 are, but I do have this factors chart that can help me. All right, so I'm going to find that number 44. All right, there it is. I found it. So let's see, it's 1 and 44, 2 and 22, and 4 and 11. All right, so we said 1 and 44. We said 2 and 22. And we said 4 and 11. Oh, yeah, that's right. 4 times 11, 2 times 22, 1 times 44. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so which of these factors adds up to positive 7? Well, wait a sec. Oh, that's right. These need to multiply to a negative 44. All right, but add to a positive number. Okay, so this time that means my smaller number is negative and my bigger number is going to be positive because it needs to add to a positive number. Okay, so now I can see that this negative 4 and positive 11 is going to give me that 7 that I'm looking for. So now I'm ready to factor this. So it's going to be x minus 4 times x plus 11. All right, and now that I factor this, I am ready to solve it. All right, so now I can see that x minus 4 is equal to 0. I add 4, I add 4, and I can say that x is equal to positive 4. All right, and I can do the same thing with x plus 11 is equal to 0. I subtract 11 here on both sides, and I get x is equal to negative 11. Awesome. All right, we got one more to do. All right, we got this. All right, so now we find factors of positive 45 that add to this negative 18. Ooh. Oh, I don't know my factors of 45. So let's look on this chart here. Oh, there it is down there at the bottom. We have 1 and 45, 3 and 15, and 5 and 9. So 1 and 45, 3 and 15, and 5 and 9. All right, so now that I listed out these factors, they have to somehow add to a negative 18. Oh, wait a second. If they multiply to positive, but add to a negative, the only way that's going to be possible if they are both negative. All right, so negative times negative is positive. That makes sense. A negative plus a negative is more negative. That also makes sense. Okay, so out of my three pairs here, right, I think it's just going to be this negative 3, and then negative 15 is going to add to my negative 18. So now I can factor this as x minus 3 times x minus 15 is equal to 0. And again, I can set each one of my factors using that zero product property, the ZPP, to solve, right? I'm going to add 3 to both sides, and we get x is equal to positive 3. All right, and then we can also say that x minus 15 is equal to 0. We add 15, and we get x is equal to 15. All right, nice job with the review. Time for you guys to work on the quizzes. All right, again, I want you to do this by yourself on paper. All right, please don't use any apps or math stuff out there. Okay, just try these problems on your own. Do your best. Email me if you have questions. All right, and have a nice weekend. And we'll be back on Tuesday.